how the education system has been going, you can basically be a soothsayer for what things are going. So that is why you are always the right person to be here to give on-air tuition, especially to our grade 12 learners who are busy with their trial exams. So they're teaching mathematics on Monday.
No, Friday.
Friday and Monday, maths paper 1 and maths paper 2.
Okay.
Okay. And as usual, when it comes to mathematics, our learners, lots of them are anxious and don't know what to expect. So you're going to tell us about the tips and areas to focus on, and what are the areas which they find really difficult, and advice.
What I'm going to do is just going to accentuate basically what the school has done. I'm sure that our children basically are in top schools with top teachers. Alhamdulillah, yes. So our children are not in really need of tips basically, because they have been well prepared. And there's so much of things. I mean, we must be grateful to the Department of Education as well, as sent out a pre-trial examination, mock paper with model answers and stuff for the learners to learn from. So most of the things, I think, learners are prepared. It's just that what we can do is just try to maximize the way they handle the paper and how to get the marks. Essentially that, because they're all preparing they've been prepared for quite a while now.
Yeah. Would you say over time or decades, or maybe when I wrote, would you say papers have gone easier, or it's still the same, or they try to be fair?
I would think, from my personal opinion, basically examiners, even the markers, they understand the child. These papers are not set to test the knowledge of teachers. There is no ego there. But the papers are fair, and they standardize at quite a high level. I wouldn't say they're easier. The syllabus has changed; it's vast. But remember, the standards are comparable. Those people that say it's easy, they haven't really done mathematics or any of the subject for that matter. It's very easy to stand outside and complain and state certain things. But any paper a child writes, I would think that will become the most difficult paper they write, because they're so committed to it. So I wouldn't say the standards have dropped. The standards are there. The syllabus is still the same. I mean, for the last 5 years. And children have a very good idea as to looking at the past year papers. It's not like the same questions come out. The concepts are the same. So they have a fair idea as to what it is. There's like bread and butter question we always talk about, where they can get the marks. But essentially, I would think the papers are very fair.
Okay. Over a period of time, a lot of learners are doing math literacy, and not doing pure maths. What's your views and opinions on that?
If I have my way, I wouldn't want maths lit.
Yeah.
But it is a reality, especially if it must not be done with the intention of increasing the results of the school. Because children, I would think, many of my kids are very, very sharp. I mean, the children we teach. If you in a classroom, which I haven't been in a while, you will notice, like even the children I do tutor, what we find is that children are very, very, as long as they understand the concept. Like I am very surprised after 4 or 5, let's say 10 minutes of explaining something, they can answer it to high levels, and we've got such sharp kids. Of course, there's average children, but they take a little longer to learn. But eventually they learn. The bottom line is, once they understand the concept, once the explanation is done properly, we find that they fly with the topics. Which I find extremely gratifying.
Well, you make comments. You're going over maths paper?
We'll do maths paper 1. I think that's basically what we talked about.
Okay, Friday. And then if you're available next week, Tuesday, we can focus on maths paper 2.
We could do that, but they're writing maths paper 2 on Monday.
Monday? And this Friday?
Yeah, this Friday is maths paper 1. Maths paper 2, you see, after they write maths, must remember they're talking about other subjects. It might not be very plausible to do on Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So I can continue?
Yeah,
okay.
You can continue.
Dear listeners, children that are listening, first of all, I'm grateful to be here, because there are certain things that people were asking. So I'll talk about it. Insofar as the maths paper 1 is concerned, I think most of you know the breakdown is already known to you, what question 1 is going to be about. But I'm going to talk about certain concepts that were done in the last term the last few weeks when children were not going back to school. Many of them were in the study program. So what happens is, at home, that is. So there are certain things that people ask, like if I'm going to look at the paper, because see, we give question papers, we give model answers or expected answers. The problem is children do not understand how the answers come about because they're very straightforward. For example, if you're looking for an answer, we just basically say X is this or X is that. So what I want to focus on is, because everybody should have this, I look at the mock paper that was given to them, and we are grateful for the authors of it and the examiners, and of course the answers. So very, very quickly, I'll look at, let's take the first question. But then I'll go more into detail when it comes to finance, probability, which is mostly what people want to talk about. So the first question, most of you know the concepts there. We're talking about quadratic equations, simultaneous equations, inequalities. So those are the bread and butter questions for you. But bear in mind that marks are allocated according to a certain level or step you go to. So where answers are required, like if you got the zero product rule, simply state what the answer is, but be careful. We're not looking at where children go and expand that. If you look at the quadratic formula now, remember there's this very new tendency that people use the solve for x. Please understand, marks will be allocated for substitution into the formula. Calculate your delta, then work out your answers. The next thing is when you're talking about, let's say we're talking about surds. Remember now, in equations, there are four disguises. You got the brackets, you got denominators, you get the radicals, or you get substitution when it comes in simultaneous. So when you are using any of those disguises or getting rid of them, make certain you show your steps. Make certain it gets down to standard form. Standard form implies that you must have ax squared plus bx plus c. Your a should be positive, no denominators, equal to 0. Show your substitution if you need to. And remember, in question 1, every question will have a question that will make you think. Do not allow yourself to lose time, right? Leave it out if it takes more than 20 to 30 seconds to figure it out and get on to the next question. When it comes to number patterns, the standard questions, quadratic number pattern, the arithmetic number pattern, the geometric number pattern, understand the basics. The examiner is testing your knowledge of those concepts. If they state, for example, arithmetic, understand the definition. There is a constant difference. Term 2 minus term 1 is equal to term 3 minus term 2, or any of the successive terms. Same thing when it comes to geometric number patterns. You talk about a constant ratio. Term 2 divided by term 1 is equal to, know those simple things, apply it, and then answer the question. Always look at what is required, code if you have to, substitute, and get your answer. But be careful, double check certain answers. Remember, the answers can be in decimal form, 2 decimal places, or sometimes even as a fraction. That's basically it. Now that's question 2 and 3. Remember, quadratic number pattern, arithmetic, geometric, but we could ask you a non-routine question. Once again, if it's something that you don't understand immediately, leave it out. Go to the next section. But when you get to the next section now, we're going to functions. Now in functions, Sumaya, you know this is graphs. There's quite a bit of things there. But to remember it, children, remember, we're looking at the word help. You got the hyperbola, the exponential, linear, and the parabola. Of course, thereafter, we're talking about inverses, basically replace x with y and y with x. And essentially, what I'll do now is I'll do some examples on. What is this thing that children are asking for there?
Well, most of them just want to know what should they focus on. And there's always a trend where they look at past year papers, trial papers. This section was done last year, so it'll not be in this year's paper. You know, they tend to just guesswork.
No. There is no such thing. Of course, people, you can look at trends, but we do not do spotting.
Yeah. We have a WhatsApp number. So if you are a grade 12 learner and you want to find out something, it's 060-904-1056. So if you would like to find out something from Mr. Khan, who's going over the maths examination paper, and if you're a learner, grade 12, you can SMS or WhatsApp us on 060-904-1056.
Okay. So, listeners, when it comes to the maths paper again, remember now we do provide you with memos. The problem is when you look at the memo, you need to understand what it is that the examiner or the person who made up the memo is writing. And remember now, the marks are allocated for specific things. What I want to go through very, very quickly is when we talk about functions, the same basic ideas on how to sketch, you must know them. Have like a trigger chart. When it comes to like the 4 functions with inverses, when you are sketching, what are we looking for? We call them the significant points. The first thing you should look for is like asymptotes. Start with the A, easy to remember. And the functions that have asymptotes except for paper 2 Matric is the hyperbola and the exponential function. Thereafter, once you establish that, you're looking for x-intercepts, making y 0. Simple things. Y-intercept, make x 0. Then you're going to turning points. Now, the only functions that have turning points are your cubic function in calculus, your parabola. That is what turning points are. Now, how do you find the turning point that's generalized for everything? Find the derivative, make 0, but in a parabola, you could use minus b over 2a and substitution. The last thing that is very important to us is what we call points. The points of intersection of 2 functions. There you're looking at now equating y's and solving. Then you have like a point of intersection of, let's say, the asymptotes. In the hyperbola, we need that to find reflection. I'll talk about reflection just now. Then the last one is we got a point of inflection, double derivative is 0. Or you could use the average of x values of the turning points or the y values of the turning point. That's when it comes to function. Now, after when you're drawing, make certain, even if you put a point down, x is equal to 5, x-intercept, you get a mark. Draw the graph. Shape is important. Significant points are important. When it comes to interpretation, now those things, we're looking for where is a graph greater than 0 above the x-axis, where is a graph less than 0 below the x-axis, increasing, decreasing, simple things. If you don't understand it, like the case of the roots question, leave them out for now, go and get all the other marks and then come back. Then interpret the question. When it comes to reflections, very straightforward things. Remember, if you're reflecting about the line x equal to something, you're looking at a horizontal distance. If you're reflecting about the line, let's say y equals to something, you're looking at a vertical distance. So simple things. However, if you're reflecting about a line like in the worksheet, in the question paper we gave you, there was a question. I think it was question 5.4. Yes. Question 5.4, that was a concern. I'm just going to look at it, where the examiner said he wanted a reflection on the point 50. Yes. About the line y equals to minus x plus 4. Now, to get the answer, which is just 2 marks, all we wanted was for you to substitute. If you substitute 50 into the equation, it will reflect the point immediately on that line, and you'll get the answer y equals to minus 1 or x equals to 4. Try that out. Then, so going on, when it comes to the equations, thereafter we had questions on finance. Finance, I want to explain quickly. What are we testing? Simple, the difference between single cash flows, and we have now annuities. When it comes to the single cash flows, remember, you must know the difference between R and I. Where we're talking about I, we want you to use I as a decimal. Refrain from using like 12% per annum. Don't write it as 12%. What we would like you to do is 0.12. Like if you do a compounded monthly divided by 12.
Yeah. Do you know, our grade 12 learners are definitely taking down tips, and you are actually alerting them and making them aware of what to focus on and how to go about. Listeners will be taking a short ad break.
We'd love to meet you. Pay us a visit. Welcome to Simplex Radio. Visit our showroom for the full range of car audio. Our TV department carries top brands with quality LED panels, full HD to Ultra HD, and now the experience of Super Ultra HD. Visit our theater rooms and transform your home with brands like Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Boston Acoustics, Yamaha, and more for quality audio visual experience. Now available, full range of home appliances. A one-stop shopping experience. Call 031 306 4029 or Kenilworth Park, 202 Brickfield Road, Overport. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust. This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Kenfield Auto.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. ربنا آمنا فاكتبنا مع الشاهدين.
Car won't start?
Kenfield Auto.
Noisy brakes?
Kenfield Auto.
Due for a service?
Kenfield Auto. Kenfield Auto, the answer to all your car problems. Your service and repair specialist for your VW, Audi, Suzuki, Toyota, or just about any vehicle. Kenfield Auto, your RMI and insurance approved workshop to handle them all. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Call us on 031 207 2399. Kenfield Auto.
Almost 1 in 5 South African children attend school each day without having eaten breakfast. This seriously affects their ability to concentrate and understand lessons. The Al Imdad Foundation's Make Breakfast Possible campaign allows learners to enjoy a high-energy cereal at the start of the school day. Help children to focus on learning and not hunger. Let's make breakfast possible today. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
They convinced the world to believe that terrorists look like beards and thobes. Now, as the facade cracks, one martyr after another, the world sees through the broken windows and now knows the true face of terrorism. It wears suits and ties and smiles behind lies.
Radio Al Ansar, 24/7, 365.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to School Matters. Yes, with me, Sumaya Khan, and we have the principal of Rosborough High, Mr. Moosa Khan, who's going over the maths paper, which will be written on Friday. And you'll also be touching on the other paper too.
If you want to, that's not a problem.
Okay. You were chatting about finance.
Gee, yeah. No, learners, when it comes to finance, just forgive me for the last one because I'm getting a major cramp on my back. I don't understand why.
Teacher stress.
Gee?
Principal stress.
No. Alhamdulillah, I work in a wonderful school with wonderful staff, so it's fine. So learners, when it comes to finance, please remember now there's certain things I want you to pay attention to because marks are allocated specifically for certain things. Otherwise, the marking becomes impossible. Now, when it comes to finance, single cash flows. Remember, single cash flows, all we're interested in there is you must know the difference between, let's say, in simple interest, right, A is equal to P into 1 plus IN. Then we also talk about straight line depreciation, a very important concept between straight line depreciation and reducing balance method. Now, that is when cars or vehicles are being depreciated. Now, again, I'm stressing this over and over again. Remember, we want I as a decimal. So when I was talking about a compounded monthly, if I'm taking an example like 12% per annum compounded monthly, we expect to see 0.12 divided by 12. If we're talking about 12% per annum compounded quarterly, 0.12 divided by 4. That is where a mark is allocated. Now, there's obviously the substitution. The other issues are be able to understand single cash flows within a annuity if that is necessary. We need single cash flows when it comes to annuities as well. But when it comes to simple ideas like depreciation, remember now, if we're looking at depreciation according to the reducing balance, remember it's P into 1 minus I to the power N. Okay. Now, let's talk about finance and the other concepts. Now, N becomes an issue. N in grade 10 will speak about number of years. You see, the N in that formula you will use as number of years. However, when we talk about N in the compound increase formula or the compound decrease, There we're talking about the number of interest calculations. That is why if we say compounded quarterly, you'll divide the rate by 4 and you'll multiply the n by 4. Simple things. Also, if you talk about monthly, you divide by 12, the rate by 12, that's I over 12, and you multiply your n by 12. But when it comes to annuities, there the n refers to the number of cash flows. Now, the calculation thereof is not very difficult. Remember, time starts at T0. So if somebody buys a vehicle or a person takes a loan, that happens at T0. Now, the biggest consternation among some children is especially when the examiner gives dates. So when it comes to dates, I'll take examples there and I'll show you how easy it is to calculate N. Now, remember, the first concept is sinking funds. Sinking funds is a fund basically that we use to replace an asset, an income-producing asset in the future. So the value of the sinking fund is the difference between the new price, which is inflation. Right? It is inflation that will increase when you talk about a new price, and depreciation, the difference gives you the value of the sinking fund. Now, children do get confused about where is the big money, or rather which formula to use. The future value formula is essentially where we're taking money. It's a summation. Now remember, because it's a summation, a into 1 minus r to the power n over 1 minus r, you have a definite start and a definite stop. So the formula is designed around a starting cash flow and an ending cash flow. So I'm talking about the future value formula where we have the future value is x into 1 plus I to the power n minus 1 all over I. Remember now, the last deposit does not earn interest. So the formula, understand the formula, it starts with the deposit and ends with the deposit, and the last deposit doesn't earn interest. That is what the future value is for. So how do you know when to use it? So you'll find there's a series of cash flows, equal cash flows, and then you're trying to find the value at the end of that period. Now, how do you work out, for example, the number of cash flows, especially if you have dates? So to make an example, let's make it up. Let's assume, for example, a person starts with a cash flow on the 30th of May. Let's just make it up. 30th of May, 2000. You write that down, like the 30th of May, 2000. And I'm just making up a date now to know what N is, especially now for annuities. And his final deposit was on, let's say, 30th of, let's make it April 2004. So remember, I'm talking from 2000, 30th of May 2000 to 30th of April 2004. Now, write it down. Make certain that your days match. All right? So if an examiner, I don't think that will happen, right, where they start from the 1st and end on the 3rd, on the 30th, try to make it, the days must match. Like if it's the end of the month, if it's like the 1st, then just move it back to make it 30th and go to the previous month. So what I would do now is, I would find the difference between the years. Like 2004 minus 2000 is 4 years. Right, you work that out first. Multiply that by 12, because you talk about 12 months in a year. Remember, I'm talking about monthly now. You get 48. So add that 48 to the months. And I said it was April 2004. So 48 plus 4 gives you 52. Okay. Now, when you are doing the counting, like when you're looking at from a starting point to a stopping point, remember the counting principle is simple. Make the problem simpler. If you're looking at, if I talk from 3 to 10, from the 3rd to the 10th, I'm talking about numbers now, how many numbers there are. Now, many people just think it's 10 minus 3, but it's not. It's 10 minus 3 plus 1. So the counting principle we're using is stop minus start plus 1. So working with this question where I'm saying a person started depositing an X amount, remember equal amount, on the 30th of May 2000 and ended on the 30th of April 2004. So I want to know how many cash flows, what is N there? So 2004 minus 2000, you're going to get 4 years. Multiply it by 12, that gives you 48. I'm using like a primary school system. So 48 added to the months of April. So 48 plus 4 is 52. And this is what you do. 52 minus 5 plus 1. That will now give you the number of cash flows. Right? Simple idea. It always works, because that is sometimes a problem with some kids, especially if the question has yes. So once again, just to explain that one more time, you can take anything. Let's say, for example, we said somebody started paying on the 30th. Just give me a date, Sumaya. End of the month, beginning of the month.
Beginning of the month. You want a date? Let's see. 7th September?
No, man. We're talking about finance now. We're talking about like the 1st. Or we can do it like that, but...
you want 25th? 30th?
Yeah, that's better. 30th of what?
September?
Okay, 30th of September, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Give me any year.
2005.
Okay. So we're talking from 30th of September 2005. Sumaya deposited, like we're talking monthly deposit, right? And she wants to do that for, give me another year now. So 2012. So let's make it 30th of August 2012. So I'm looking at the difference in dates now, but I'm not going to spend too much of time on it, but essentially just what I'm going to do. Since my days match, I'm going to look at 12 minus 5, it's 7. So 7 times 12 gives me 84. Remember, I'm looking from 30th of September 2005 to the 30th of August 2012. Okay. So 12 minus 5 is 7. 7 times 12 is 84. 84 plus 8. Right. You get 92 minus 9. Work that out. 92 minus 9 very simply, and add 1 to it. So 92 minus 9 plus 1. The answer comes out to be very straightforward. Use your calculators, people, if you're tired. So you get 74 months. So that is how you work out N. Now remember, the examiner will state specifically as to when they start paying. Now, why that must be necessary? When it comes to the present value formula, bear in mind there are concepts. For example, the present value formula works from the loan that is taken, or a annuity that, or pension fund that is created. What happens is, when is the first payment and when is the first withdrawal? Now, normally it's one period after the loan is taken or after the deposit is made, if somebody is talking about withdrawing to live off that investment. Please remember, when it comes to that, if the normal situation is, if you're talking monthly, if somebody takes a loan at T0, the first payment is at T1. If there's any cash flows at T0, you got one of these 3 situations. For example, like in the mock paper, you saw somebody put a deposit. So if you're talking about putting a deposit down, leverage 20%, then you have to work out the loan by working out 80% of what the selling price was. However, if they say something like the person put a deposit of, let's say, 90,000 rands, but that represents 10%, right? That represents 10% of what the selling price was. So what will happen is, you will now take 90,000 divided by 10% times 100. That will give you the selling price. So there's small, simple mathematics to do there. So the present value formula, remember now, if the bond is not being paid in the next month, that is the normal way. That's the present value. The present value formula discounts all the future payments. So if it's not paid like we're talking monthly, the next month, then what happens is, if it happens a few months later, then that is known as a deferred payment. So that will require, whatever the loan amount was, you have to take interest into consideration for one period before the payment starts. So that is why it is very specific. You will be told exactly when the first payment is. However, the other situation is, during the loan term, then there's some missed payments. Then there you have to work the loan balance as well. So be careful about N again. So very, very quickly, I'll just make up some, I got some questions here we can talk about, like would coming to the present value, and things that you must not do. Remember now, if we're talking about a person investing like 1.5 million into a fund, I'm just going to use simple examples like 12% per annum compounded monthly, and he wishes to withdraw 25,000 every month. Think of the idea. The question says, how long? Remember, how long will you be able to live off this investment? That is the use of logs. Now, do the normal calculation, show the substitution. Like if I'm talking about 1.5 million now, and I'm taking out 25,000, that's present value. So do not always think that the present value is about loans. in this situation, remember, if the big money is available at the beginning, we are now going to discount future payments. So we talk about present value. So that's one situation. And when you substitute now, you can even use the solve for X, but remember, it takes up time. Simple calculations work out N, but remember here, when you work out your N using logs, you're going to get a lot of decimal places. Maintain those decimal places because we require that, especially with the common idea that the examiners bring up. They'll ask you for what was the amount of the last payment, or they'll ask you what was his last withdrawal, things like that. So you're going to use those decimal places now. You can use one of two methods. If you're working out loan balance, you could use loan plus interest minus the payments plus interest, or the present value of any outstanding. See the decimals of the residue. That's like a shorter form. And you get your answers now to two decimal places. But remember, the amount of the last payment, what you need to do is, once you get your loan balance there, you will now subject it to an interest period for 1 month. And that is how you get the amount of the last payment. Thereafter, we have situations like I'm talking about, let's say, where there's a deferred payment. Sometimes it might happen that somebody takes a loan, and what happens there is they don't pay immediately. If you're talking about monthly payment, they don't pay it immediately after 1 month. They are given like a reprieve, especially some companies do that around November, December, January period where people get the bonuses. They ask them to buy vehicles. They allow them to buy it and pay like 3 months later. So be aware that there you will use like a single cash flow formula, P into 1 plus I to, let's say if it was 3 months, that will give you a new loan amount, because you will still be charged interest for that, right? So if, for example, you've got a simple question here, a person, as an example now, is taking a loan for 720,000, right, at 9.6% per annum compounded monthly for 20 years. Now that's a straightforward situation. 20 years times 12, you're getting your months 240. But bear in mind, I've seen this recently. Remember, the formula has a negative there. Double check that, right? So if you want to work out now, calculate how much he needs to pay monthly. I'm looking at a loan of 720,000 at 9.6% per annum. Remember, we would like to see 0.096 over 12. We're looking at the N is minus 240. If you're using solve for X, people, I don't mind you checking your answers by that method. But remember, the final answer we got here, in this case, I got X is 6758.43. However, if the first installment is a few months later, let's say 3 months later, so that means if it's 3 months later, you will have to add interest for 2 months. If the first installment is 5 months later, you need to take installments. You will need to work out interest for 4 months, because you'll always work out for one period before the payment starts, because the present value formula, I said, discounts. That is how the formula was created. So you cannot work out like the loan balance at the time that he's going to be making his payment. Now, bear in mind, when you're looking at the number of payments, it is essential stop minus start plus 1. So during the course of, let's say, a loan period, a payment plan, if a person starts paying, let's say, from the 70th month, right, and he's going to end at, let's say, the 240th month. So to work out the number of payments from the 70, let's assume he missed his payments in 69, 68, 67. So to work out the value of N here from 70 to 240, remember, you must always use stop minus start plus 1. So 240 minus, let's say, 70, then you're going to add 1 to it. That will give you the number of payments left. So that works out to 171. That's a simple idea. Remember, look at when did he start paying again? When does he stop? Now that works out for where there's a missed payment within a situation of a loan period. Now, the next thing that I wanted to speak about, Sumaya, was because people were asking, is this issue of probability and counting, right? So learners, that's the last question, okay? Now, once again, those are the questions that make you need to think about it, because calculus you've done quite often, right? So the bread and butter questions there, derivative from first principles, be able to do it on a linear function, a quadratic, a cubic. Of course, you get the obscure reciprocal. That's just do some practice on that one. And thereafter, you got derivatives using rules. The same thing that we applied for question 1, where we disguise equations, brackets, denominators, radicals, substitutions. The same thing happens in calculus. If you need to find the derivative now using rules, you must understand that you cannot find the derivative if your unknown, your variable, is in a bracket. You need to expand that. You need to find the derivative. You cannot find it if the variable is in the denominator. You can either use division or you can use the simple, like 1 over x becomes x to the minus 1. 1 over x squared becomes x to the minus 2. Right? Those are definitions from exponents. If you have a radical, convert it to a power. Square root becomes power half. The basic idea is to make certain that no variable is in radical. Substitution is more a technique when you got like 2 variables and you need derivative of y with respect to x or derivative of x with respect to something else. Now, that is the rules. Simple things. Make certain that when you do find the derivative, your entire expression is free of x's in brackets, denominators, and radicals. Now, like the 3 marks will be for the actual answer, but we do not expect you to go and write it with positive exponents. You will notice in past year papers, none of those things are required, right? To express it with positive exponents or bring it back to cert form. Now, when it comes to application of the derivative, what are the concepts you're looking at? Can you find the derivative? Of course, the value of a derivative at a point. You're talking slopes there. You are looking at sometimes determining the equation of a tangent to a function at a particular point. Now, bear in mind, once again, you're looking at a straight line. You need the gradient, which comes from the derivative. You need a point, the point of tangency, to substitute, and you get the equation out. Now, in this particular paper that you had, the mock one spoke about a perpendicular, right, which we call a normal. What happens there is you will talk about product of gradients being -1. When it comes to cubic functions, be prepared for an equation like the one you've got here, and even the graph that is maybe drawn for you. Again, go back to the concept of significant points. What are the x-intercepts, the y-intercepts, your turning points, derivative made 0, solve. If you're using a calculator to double check, perfect. But the simple things, for example, your factors. It is very strange to find children, if you're factorizing like x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals to 0, we find that how they last term, they because the sign is positive, they got different signs. Those are simple errors that create problems for children.
We'll take a short ad break.
Okay, no problem.
اللهم احفظ المسجد الأقصى من اليهود الحاقدين اللهم أعد المسجد الأقصى إلى رحاب المسلمين اللهم وطهر المسجد الأقصى من اليهود الغاصبين اللهم عليك بهم فإنهم لا يعجزونك يا قوي يا متين اللهم منزل الكتاب مجري السحاب هازم الأحزاب سريع الحساب اهزم اليهود وزلزلهم يا
Hungry for flavor? Head over to Nando's Pavilion, Westville Mall or Oceans Mall, where our flame-grilled peri-peri chicken is always fresh and flavorful. Experience our hospitality by dining in at Nando's Pavilion, Westville Mall or Oceans Mall, which are all NIHT certified, and stand a chance to win a holiday getaway for 4 valued at 10,000 Rand at the Umhlanga Sands. Nando's! Fire it up!
Immerse yourself in the love and praise of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, every Wednesday from 1:30 to 2 p.m. Be with the Beloved, hosted by Maulana Muhammad Salih Jusuf Arbi Qadri Moini, explores the beautiful qasaid and nas that bring us closer to his blessed legacy. Join us for a profound experience of spiritual intimacy and devotion right here on Radio Al Ansar. Elevate your spirit and reconnect with the heart of our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Looking for a way to deepen deepen your spiritual journey? Join us on Urban Woman Monday to Thursday, right after the 10 a.m. news. Together we'll complete the Holy Quran, one meaningful session at a time. Don't miss out. Tune in, inshallah, and transform your mornings with us.
Audio stream across the world on radioalansar.co.za.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to School Matters. Yes, we have Mr. Khan who's going over the maths paper grade 12. Well, he will be rounding off in the last 10 minutes.
Oh, yes, I was talking to you about calculus. Now, calculus, remember, besides the cubic function, there are 4 types of questions you get there. You cannot, like Sumaya was asking whether you can't spot. You could get an equation. You could get a graph. Now, when it comes to given a graph, bear in mind you probably finding unknown coefficients. When you're finding unknown coefficients, look at what the information is. Always pay attention to what was given. If you are given x-intercepts, as a simple example, you could use y is equal to a into. Remember, look for what is the version of the formula the examiner has given. If he has given you a ax cubed, that means a has to be part of your equation. If he gives you x cubed, that means a is 1. Okay? So set up your equation according to what is given. Now, bear in mind when the graph turns on the x-axis, that becomes a repeat factor. Also, when it comes to substitutions, when you have 3 unknowns, you obviously will need 3 substitutions. But when you have a turning point, take a simple example. If a cubic function is turning at, let's say, 3, 7. Now, there are 2 substitutions of 3, 7. 3 can go in the place of x to give you y, which is 7. Or 3 can go, remember if I'm saying 3, 7 is a turning point. 3 can go into the derivative where it becomes 0. All right, so there's 2 substitutions on the turning point. That's also for the application of the derivative, and that is how you find your unknown coefficients. Also now, the third type of question you can get there is like properties. The examiner could describe information about the graph, when it is increasing, when it is decreasing, when is the derivative 0, so the turning points are given, the x values of the turning points are given, and from there, remember, you don't have to find the equation, just draw it. Look at the mark scheme, that's what happens. The other style of question you could get is where they give you the derivative function. Now, if you're given the derivative function and you have to interpret it, that's abstract. But it's easy to work out. If you got the x-intercepts of the derivative, that will be the x values of your turning point of the function. And look at where the derivative function lies. When it's above the x-axis, it means the derivative is positive, which means the function is increasing, right? If you find that the derivative function is below the x-axis, it means now the derivative is negative, the function is decreasing. So that is how you could possibly get the shape of the graph. But look at the simple things. Remember, the maths paper is not a competition between the adult and the child. Yeah. It is designed to get kids to progress to greater levels than us. And if the child can see it, and remember now, it's a lot of psychology. Take care of the simple things, because look at what the concept wants, and from there work out his strategy. Like all these questions require you to evaluate. Now, some questions take longer, like this thing about probability. Because after calculus is over, remember, you look at maxima and minima. I don't want to skirt over it, but I don't want to say spotting as well, because the bottom line when it comes to maxima, what's the concept? The concept is you cannot find the derivative in 2 variables. Yeah. Right? That's important. You need to understand that you need to get rid of 1 variable, because when you talk about maximizing or minimizing, you're looking at some quantity. If it's volume, bear in mind now, you're going to have probably like an x and an h. You must get rid of one of those variables. So that is why you get information. If you want to maximize volume, you'll probably have a statement on surface area. Now there too, just use the formula will be given, but you need to be very generic because it's simple. If you're talking about with the lid, we're talking about total surface area becoming 2 times the area of the base plus the perimeter of base times height. But you'll have the formula there to use. But if you can't work out the first one where it makes you derive 3 marks, leave it for now. Go to the next part where every question is designed for even the child that is not at that level of development we want them to be to get marks, because the marks are there. Because sometimes at the end they'll say determine the actual volume, where you know the X value. It's substitution again. You can go and get marks. Now, that's for the calculus. When it comes to rates of change, remember, rates of change, we're looking at just two ideas. The difference between average rate of change and instantaneous. So when it comes to average rate of change, we're looking at delta Y over delta X. We use the word average because normally it's a curve. But instantaneous rate of change, now there you're talking about the value of the derivative at a point, right? And that's what we mean by instantaneous. That's what calculus allows us to do, to work out the value of the derivative at that particular instant. So substitution, how do we bring about the word instant? Like, how do you know when to substitute into the derivative or when to substitute into, we're talking delta Y over delta X. When it comes to the derivative, remember now, we do not use terms like, or phrases like during. During implies an interval of time, right? Or like the word in, right? In the third minute, right? So when we talk about instantaneous, we're looking at when t is equal to, or at the end of. So that's instantaneous. That's for rates of change. Once calculus is over, you're going into probability, and we're looking at counting. Now, the metric aspect is especially just arrangements, and we're only talking about linear arrangements. But there too, probability from grade 11 is also important. You must know the general case. You must know how to deal with Venn diagrams, tree diagrams, and lastly, the contingency table. The common questions of being able to, is this thing independent, or is it other events mutually exclusive? Simple questions. You'll find numerous questions in past year papers about that, but know the not case as well. And of course, when it comes to arrangements, we're talking about straight lines. Simple ideas, two items, two objects, two real objects, two. Time's up.
Time is up. Last parting advice to our great child.
I want to see, I would like kids, most of the kids, remember now, they must have a lot of faith.
Yeah.
Be positive, because they've come quite far.
Mm-hmm.
And many of them, if they only know how I look at them in awe of the things that they are able to do, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yes, we do understand it's stressful. We know that. But take care of the little things. There's lots of marks to get in the paper. Perfection will come. Inshallah. I mean, right? But for now, concentrate on the marks you can get and look at time. The issue is time.
Yeah. Jazakallah so much. Our technician is showing us there's a whole lot of messages on, great show, vital information. So we are making a difference. You are making a difference for always coming on School Matters and, giving us tips. Well, inshallah, looking forward to have you throughout the year and even next year. All the best for your school for the Matric results.
Jazakallah, and all the best to the kids as well.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to thank our guests for making the show possible. My email address is sumayakhan.alansar@outlook.com. Matters team, will sponsor learners in 67 schools in KZN, providing, either a meal, a surprise, a treat, stationery. So if you're a principal and educator from that school, you can email me a motivational letter. And you could be chosen. So far, we have done Daydon, which were chosen. And tomorrow, inshallah, the outreach team will be doing Al-Azhar, which will be spoiled. Well, don't forget to send that email. You could definitely be a winner. Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your time is waiting, so get on your way. Believe you can, and you're halfway there. Assalamu alaikum.